Infowars. Tomorrow's news today.
We knew if we told the truth, they'd come after us. We knew if we stood up to them, they'd try to destroy us. We're now at that point in late 2018. So whatever you do, folks, dump your PayPal wallets at InfoWarsStore.com. Get great products, but bet on the First Amendment and bet on America, because I'm betting on you. And then cancel PayPal. George Soros owns it now, and let that Nazi collaborator piece of crap know. He may have been able to kill a bunch of innocent Europeans, but that old son of a bitch has met his match in America. So fuck you, Soros.
I knew if I reported the truth that the fake news media covers up day in, day out, they come after me. But Infowars is bigger than Alex Jones. Infowars is a movement of millions rising up together to take back what is ours from the masters of society. Infowars is the real movement that abolishes the present state of things. It is a ruthless critique of everything existing. Now I want all of you at home to listen closely, because I've uncovered some documents. Oh boy, do I have documents. And they're all coded. They're coded! Listen to this mind-blowing communication I received through the transdimensional dilation of time through ancestral DNA and critical theory. This comes directly from info warrior Theodore Adorno, and I quote, "The tendency to occultism is a symptom of regression in consciousness. The veiled tendency of society towards disaster lulls its victims into a false revelation with a hallucinated phenomenon. In vain, they hope in its fragmented blatancy to look their total doom in the eye and withstand it. The awful of the phenomenal world becomes, to sick consciousness, the mundus intelligent bliss." That's right, people. Disaster, crisis, doom, and sickness. This is what we face today. You see, there's something they don't want you to know about this sick society we live in. Our creative powers are being alienated from us through a system of abstract domination mediated by the law of value that appears to operate as a law of nature. This demonic force is a cultic fetish that makes the existence of the things qua commodities and the value relation between the products of labor, which stamps them as commodities, to have absolutely no connection with their physical properties and with the material relations arising therefrom. It is a definite social relation between people that assumes, in their eyes, the fantastic form of a relation between things. This commodity fetishism is the evil form of appearance of the dark energy of capital over all of us. It sucks on living labor like a vampire and lives more the more it sucks your vital lifeblood. We must come together, people, to expose and destroy this global system of domination and exploitation. And this is why we are proud to introduce a new supplement we created with new partners. For just $322, you can get a trial order of Dr. Antifada's Brain Bomb exclusively from Infowars.com. This nootropic is guaranteed to cure impotence, adenoidal diphtheria, chronic gorilla mind mumps, and Russian derangement syndrome. Order today to keep our movement against the forces of darkness alive.
Hello and welcome to the Antifada, where unrest is best. I'm Jamie Peck.
I am Sean KB.
And I'm AP Andy.
And we are here with a very special guest today, writer, researcher, PhD candidate in the social psychology program at the CUNY Grad Center, Tanzim, aka Tanz. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
All right.
We're all right. All right. So we got a lot to go through today. I'm going to jump right in with our icebreaker question, and that question is, Tanz, how pure is your hate today?
My hate is always pure.
Hell yeah.
That's the mindset.
A lot of hateful guests on this show.
We had one loving guest last week. David Cleon was a sweetheart.
Yeah, but those people are boring.
He learned by the end.
Yeah.
He got in the mindset.
Yeah, he did. We brought him there.
Yeah, I mean, I think my hate is like, you know, it's all right today. It's not as pure as usual. I'm very tired, so that makes me more cranky. But reading about these conspiracy theories just, it got me up and going. So hopefully that will happen again when we discuss them.
It's like a strong cup of coffee.
You didn't know about the New World Order?
Oh, I mean, I knew some about it, but I know a lot more now that I have been possessed by the spirit of Alex Jones. So there we go.
She does constantly play that Ministry song in the apartment at all times. Now she understands.
Yeah. So, Tanz, I figure we should start out by getting a little bit of your story, your background, how you got into leftist politics, etc. Because as I understand it, you are currently a communist.
Yeah, how did I get into leftist politics? I hate this question.
It's fine. It's fine. Ease your way into it.
But I mean, I guess like growing up, my father was like really, my dad is crazy. My whole family is crazy, but my dad especially. And so my dad was always like ranting about politics in the house, always something, right? And so my dad is not like a communist. My dad thinks like communism is shit, capitalism is shit. He just hates everything. He's like, everything, this is all trash.
Like George Carlin.
Yeah, kind of like that, but not as cool. But yeah, so, but you know, he would always rant about something happening. And the way he always frames stuff is that the West is bad. America is bad. Europe is bad. All these places are shit. We live here because where the hell else are we going to go? And his thing, my whole family thing was always, you know, you might live here, but don't end up like these people.
Ooh.
So there was kind of like, that was like my introduction into any kind of like political stuff. And so I remember, funny story, I remember when I was in the 4th grade, maybe, I came home talking about something having to do with Thanksgiving and Native American, something like that. And my dad was like, your teacher's lying to you. Sit down. Let me tell you what really happened. And he went through this crazy, he told me the truth, right? He was like, Columbus. That's what we were talking about in school. Right. And I came home talking about this, and my father was like, that's bullshit. Columbus is a murderer. Let me break everything down for you. So then I went to school the next day and regurgitated all of that to everyone.
Nice.
So this is kind of like how, you know, I first began to really, or not really, but just my first like sort of introduction to anything political was through family, through my father, really.
And it was a purely sort of negative critique of like everything. So you had to find something sort of positive.
Yeah. I mean, no, the only thing positive, no, my father knew what was positive. Okay. What was positive was Islam. Just follow Islam. Just go to the masjid and pray and do what you got to do and all these things. And I was always kind of like, meh, that doesn't really do it for me. So, you know, and then, I mean, there was always something to talk about political, right? And I was really into this too, because the thing is like, I don't know, like growing up poor, I was just like, this shit is fucked up. Like, I know something's wrong here. And so my mom, she was a nanny. And when I was really little, I used to go with her when she would nanny for these really, really rich white people. And I saw the things they had and I was like, I don't have this. This is crazy. And eventually, when I was around like 7 or 8, the families didn't want me to come anymore because they were like, you're just going to focus on your daughter and not our children. And we need you here to take care of our kids. So I wasn't allowed to go anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, so it was like a combination of like so many different things. So then, Cuba. Cuba was big in my life. My dad loved Cuba.
Interesting.
He loved Che, he loved Fidel, he loved all this stuff. So when I was 11, he bought me a book about Cuba. It was like a kid's book, kind of breaking down the Cuban Revolution and what it was about. And I didn't know what the hell communism really was at that point, but I was like, I guess I'm communist because I like Cuba. So I just kind of went through life saying this. Like at high school, I was like, yeah, I'm communist. And everybody was just like, what the hell are you talking about right now? And so, you know, this is when I first started saying I was communist. And you know, later on, like as I got older, the end of high school into college, I understood capitalism was fucked up. And I didn't know like all the jargon. I didn't have all the words, but I knew that shit was fucked up. And so I was always talking about this. And it wasn't until I was who was the first group I came in contact with?
I hope it was a Spartacus because I'm a member.
It was the RCP.
Ah, those bastards.
The RCP. So
we got a real hard on for them. We hate the RCP.
Yeah, they're fucking crazy.
They got good street game though.
I met them when I was probably about 19 or 20. Because they were doing an event where it was a conversation between Carl Dix, who's one of their members or part of their leadership or whatever, and what's his name? Cornel West.
Ah, yes.
And so I dragged my boyfriend, who was not at the time, who was not political at all, to this talk, and I was like, we're going to this shit. And he was like, woman, like, what are we doing here? So we get there, and the talk was good. And at the time, and this is before I knew anything else about the RCP, right? So all I'm seeing of the RCP is Carl Dix talking, and he's saying all these things that make a lot of sense. And I'm like, yeah. And then Cornel West, who's like the liberal, I was like, fuck this. I was like, this is fucking stupid. My ex was like, what do you mean? That dude is crazy. I like Cornel West. So we had this argument. And as we're leaving, you know, we're leaving the event, and the RCP just, like, at their events, they just descend on you. And it's like crazies with newspapers. And I was like, son, no, what is this? And I was so turned off. And I was like, why are these people so fucking weird? And I just remember this one old lady who came up to me with a nutpaper, and she was like, the revolution is here. We have a leader. And I was like, yo, I can't. So that was like
Bob Avakian didn't turn you into a full-fledged communist with his new synthesis?
Right? Shocking. Okay. And actually, so that first event that I went to, I actually bought their DVD where it's like Bob Avakian like talking about like whatever the fuck he talked, just like him ranting for like 2 hours.
Yeah. He's like Fidel Castro. He can go on for like 12
right?
hours.
And so I was just kind of like, these people are fucking nuts. Like I think I like communism. I was like, look, I like Cuba. That's what I know. And these people, I think they like Cuba, but they're crazy. And so I was like totally turned off from like these groups, you know. The second group I came in contact with was the PSL.
Another Maoist group.
Another psychotic group. They're also nuts. And the thing about the PSL, I met them. I went to like a protest. And I saw them, and they're just kind of like, they swarm. Like, they see young people. I think particularly young people of color. They love young people of color.
RCP does too, but yeah.
Yeah.
PSL definitely.
But it's just like, so any young person of color at a protest or at anything, they just swarm, and then, I don't know, or I was at an event. It was an event done by a group. It was a pro-Palestinian group called Existence is Resistance. That's where I met them. And Existence is Resistance, you know, they're cool. I like them. They're not crazies like the PSL, but they hang out with the PSL, and the PSL is up in it, and I'm just like, ugh. So when I first met them, they didn't tell me they were a group. It was just a couple of individual people that started talking to me. And I did find them very strange because I was like, you guys are like awkward on another level. Like, I don't know how to have a conversation with you. But they were nice. And I was like, oh, all right. So then a couple of them wanted to hang out with me. They would be like, let's get a drink. Let's get food. Let's go to the beach. I was like, okay, I guess. I like doing these things, so I will do it with you.
They were there on that long gang.
Yeah. So I remember, it was we went out to dinner. We were in an Ethiopian spot, and we're talking. And at this point, I didn't know shit about, like, I didn't know exactly what their politics were. I didn't know they were a Maoist group. I didn't even know what the hell that meant at the time. So I'm sitting here, and we're eating food, and they start talking about Stalin. And I'm just, like, so confused, because I'm, like, in my head, I'm like, wait, why do they like Stalin? Because I thought he was crazy. So finally, I was
Good
like...
question.
Yeah, I was like, guys, wasn't Stalin, like, a mass murderer? And they were like... imperialist propaganda. And I was just like, whoa, okay, so you're nuts too.
It's too bad you didn't get the Stalinist children's book instead of the Castro.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, although I don't know what the real difference is between the two. But anyway.
You could have been a tankie earlier, I think is the point.
Yeah, right? No, but I was just like, wow, no, okay, these people are clearly nuts too. So then I stopped hanging out with them. And when I went to grad school when I was like 25, I went to the new school. Big mistake. Never go to the new, unless you're a rich person whose parents can pay for that shit. Don't go to the new school because they will give you no money and you will take out a shit ton of loans and then you will want to die because life will suck. I am in so much debt, but anyway.
None of us will ever go to the new school.
No, it would never happen.
Horrible. I wish I knew someone to warn me before. I would not have made that mistake. But anyway, so you know, I'm in grad school and I kind of had, like, I knew capitalism was bad again. I knew I liked Cuba, but I didn't know like I didn't know like all this stuff, you know, like all that politics encompasses. And so I was just kind of like, look, I want to do shit. You know, how do you do stuff? And so I met this chick who went to the new school, and she was like she had lived in Venezuela and she was really into Venezuela. And I was like, all right, that's cool, I guess. I mean, I know my dad likes Venezuela, so whatever, you know. And she introduced me to these other leftists that she knew who happened to be, I think, anarchists. And I found them to be strange too, because I was like, why do you...
I sense a pattern here. It's almost like leftists have some sort of social
awkwardness.
issues.
I don't know.
There you go.
But I was just like, you all smell so bad. Like, even if I agree with what you're saying, like, I can't stand next to you.
So true.
I was like, come on, like, deodorant, people, soap and water. We're in the first world. So anyway.
Crime Thing for Children. Could have got that book.
So I met them. And
That's why you never came to my parties.
Yeah, you know. Now you know the truth. No, but, and I was like, all right, look. I was like, I just want to do some shit. And I met some people that were doing something around a community garden. And to be quite honest with you, I don't give a fuck about a community garden. But I was like, all right, like, I guess this is a thing that I can sort of do. People got arrested over this damn community garden. Like, whatever. This was kind of like my first real thing, like, doing with a group of people, I guess. I guess you could call it organizing.
And this was in New York City?
This was in the Bronx, yeah.
All right.
It was in the Bronx.
From your accent, I was going to guess you were from Connecticut, but Bronx makes sense.
Right? Yeah.
Jamie says as a Connecticutter.
Oh, really? Where are you from in Connecticut?
West Hartford.
I don't even. Oh, I know Hartford. Regular Hartford. Is that?
It's west of Hartford.
West of Hartford. Yeah.
It's not just a clever name.
It's literally just like a fucking flyover state, decaf New England.
Yeah. No, but I used to go. Sorry, we're getting off topic. But I used to go to Bridgeport when I was in college. I used to go there for parties. Let me tell you something. Bridgeport, fucking Connecticut, is where you will die if you go.
It was the stabbing capital of the country.
And I believe it. I fucking believe it. I remember I went to a party with my ex in college. We get out the car. This is the first time I'm going to fucking Bridgeport, Connecticut. I was like, what the fuck is in Connecticut? So we get there. We get out the car, and immediately my stomach sank. And I was like, I will die here because this is the hoodest hood I've ever seen in my life. And I've never been scared to be anywhere. But I found myself scared in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Because it's a weird, bad combo of like inner city and nothing around it for miles.
That's the weird thing about like New York City too, is that let me put it this way. Like I've been to Newburgh, New York. Have you ever been to Newburgh?
Oh, in the central,
upstate a bit?
What is it, the Hudson Valley?
Hudson Valley. I had the same feeling. I almost got rolled there. Like I haven't been rolled in New York City. Like I've had to run a couple times, but like this was only like a year or so ago. And Newburgh sketched me out way more than anywhere in the Bronx or Brooklyn.
That doesn't surprise me because it's just nothing. Like what you were saying about Bridgeport is like the hood with nothing there. Like literally nothing. And it's crazy. It just... I don't know. So Bridgeport, I mean, I got to like Bridgeport later because there was cool people there and the parties were good, but that's my knowledge of Connecticut.
Like these hollowed out post-industrial towns can be quite desolate.
And,
And to all the listeners from Newburgh, New York out there, I don't know enough about your town to really be able to judge it, so do not stop listening to the show because I said Newburgh is scary.
We still love you, Newburgh.
I'm from
Shout out
Connecticut. I'm allowed to say these things.
I am not from Newburgh, so I can't say shit. I'm also not in the Spartacus League, by the way. That was a joke. It's a running joke we have on the show.
We don't want any listeners to misunderstand you like they did when you were talking shit on bike lanes, okay? I'm
know.
like, really? That's the thing that the Chapo fans found problematic?
Sometimes my sense of humor and irony doesn't really come through.
I don't know anything about Spartacus. I just know a lot of people on the left don't like them.
They're like, I think like if I can kind of take your story and boil it down a bit, the Spartacus are, I think, similar to the RCP and the PSL in that they show up to a lot of shit. They have newspapers. They love to recruit people, right? But you were just getting to an example of actual organizing, right? Which is something that these people, I'm not saying they don't do anything, but they're like a grassroots campaign around a green space in the Bronx, right? Might not be their main thing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say I'm at a place where I don't think anybody does anything. I don't care what you say you do. I don't care what group you're in. I really am just like, fuck everybody, you do nothing. We did nothing. This is really how I feel at this point. But yeah, so we did this stupid community garden shit for like a hot second, and then I moved on because I don't care about a community garden. But we ended up basically it was about 9 of us, I believe. So it was around the time of Occupy. When Occupy happened, we started, there was all the little Occupies in different neighborhoods and stuff in different boroughs. And so there was an Occupy the Bronx. And so everybody who did any kind of anything ever in the Bronx went to this. And it was just a fucking shit show because we're standing in a circle in the middle of the Bronx doing fucking retarded hand signals. And what the fuck were we really thinking? But anyway, so from there, a group of like 9 of us decided we're going to start doing stuff around policing. So we formed a group called Take Back the Bronx. We started doing anti-policing stuff. And this was around the same time that Ramarley Graham was murdered in the Bronx. So we got sort of involved in that struggle. We went to a couple things with the family. We didn't do a lot of work alongside the family. I mean, we were doing more like police violence in general type stuff. But so it was at that time, and it was also around the same time that a young man named Jatik Reed was beaten by the cops brutally. I believe he was like 17 at the time. This is like a kid, you know, and as the story goes, like these same cops would harass him and his friends all the time. And one day, 5 cops stomped him out in front of his, I believe it was in front of his building.
Almost like an Eric Garner type situation, except that he didn't actually get killed by the police.
Right. And then he got arrested, and then his mother and his brother went to the police station to be like, what the hell is going on? And then they arrested them.
Jesus Christ.
And
just like the dude who took the video of the Eric Garner thing.
Yeah.
He's the only one that went to jail for the fucking
Ramsey
thing.
Orta is the only one that's been locked up. It's,
Yep.
and you know, if this is not retaliation, then I don't fucking know what is. But
Deadass.
so, you know, we got involved around that stuff. And from there, we're like, you know what, like, anti-policing stuff right now is the work that we're doing. So we started doing more work in the Bronx, around the neighborhood where Ramali Graham was murdered. And we would do these things called no cop zones. We would take a block, we would plug into a bodega, and we would have speakers, play music, have a DJ, and we had an open mic. We called it the people's, what was it? Yeah, the people's mic or some shit like that. We were like, you know, just come up and say whatever you want about the cops. So sometimes people would come and they would share a story about something that happened to them with the police. Sometimes people would come and they would be like, you know, I just want to say fuck the cops, and, you know, whatever they wanted to say. So it was, and what did we have? Oh, we put up a little sign that would say no cop zone, which obviously is not a no cop zone, but we like to pretend.
They know better.
Yeah.
They know better.
Those pigs know better.
No cop zone.
I could honestly listen to you talk about this stuff all day long, but I would like to get into the meat of the episode, which is conspiracy theories. And I just want to like introduce this because we're going to talk about it later. In brief, Tanz wrote a very cool, what do we call it, pamphlet?
Yeah,
tract.
along with like a bunch of other people.
Yes,
not just me.
co-authored
We all know. Good
a
people,
tract
friends of the show.
called Overthrowing the Illuminati.
Yeah.
About conspiracy theories and kind of connecting them up to a systemic analysis of what's really wrong with the world. So we're going to talk. We have some questions for you about that in a minute.
And the really cool thing about the zine is it's just got the pyramid eye on the cover. It says how to overcome the Illuminati or something. So it's geared towards people who are primed to accept that, which is just incredibly popular in, you know, in their city.
Yeah.
In general, people believe in the Illuminati. They want to know what it is. And this zine might throw them for a little bit of a loop.
That's right.
The scene might just tell them.
And in preparation for the show, you know, because I work a lot. I got a new job recently for a really scumbag outfit. They really running me like crazy. So I had a tough work week adjusting to that. But then I had the nice calming experience of going with Jamie through, I'd say, at least a dozen hours of the most insane conspiracy shit. Not just Illuminati, but we had 33rd degree Freemasons.
Yeah.
We had Bilderberg. We had the Trilateral Commission. We had 9/11 Truth. We had goddamn Flat Earth.
Don't forget the flat earthers.
Flat
I've been
earthers.
watching these
Never
videos.
forget the flat earthers.
Oh my God, the Flat Earthers.
Why?
That's like we're going to get to the Flat Earthers. But ultimately, you know, at the end, it was a very calming and, you know, serene experience. And I think we are ready to raise Thule and complete the system of German idealism. So let's get into this conspiracy stuff. So in conspiracy theory news, the deplatforming of Alex Jones and Infowars continues. Now, we give him a platform on our show, of course, because he seems to have taken a turn towards the value form. But recent news is that PayPal has now taken him off, so he can no longer get money through that network. He is very unhappy about that. So this was really the downfall for Jones, is that he went too far and really caused havoc in people's lives with his weird conspiracy theories. So, you know.
It didn't start there, right? He had 9/11 conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Like that's when, I interviewed his ex-wife, Kelly Jones, for a story that is stuck in legal limbo at the moment, but she said, you know, one of the moments where she was like, oh shit, this guy's crazy was after 9/11. You know, everyone was like on their porches with candles in Austin. And he's like spouting all this crazy nonsense about it. And she's like, that's not good.
So you talked to Alex Jones' ex-wife. Are we going to read about that at any point?
I did indeed. Well, I'm a little bit annoyed right now, actually, because I was assigned this article and then it's very complicated, as you can probably imagine, the amount of legal shit that they're in with one another right now. And considering how litigious Alex Jones is, it's like maybe wasn't maybe we all bit off more than we could chew on this one. But the one point I want to make, because he really likes to complain about freedom of speech and being deplatformed. But I mean, as if it wasn't clear already that these complaints are a little disingenuous coming from these people and do not apply across the board. He has filed multiple lawsuits, among other things, to try to keep his ex-wife quiet about the details of the case, their marriage, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe doesn't care about freedom of speech for her. And as we're going to see in this next clip, he likes to talk about child abuse quite a bit, but multiple court, whatchamacallit, experts, therapists, whatever, have said, and Kelly Jones is claiming, which I believe, that he has, he's done a thing called parental alienation, where when two parents are going through a high conflict divorce, one parent alienates the children from the other one and like deliberately poisons them against the other parent, and that is obviously very bad for the kids. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind when we listen to this next clip where Alex Jones is railing about protecting children.
Okay, so this is the David Icke Explains Reptilians to Alex Jones clip.
Okay, let me just keep an open mind here. I read Genesis, and it talks about God destroying the life on the earth because these entities had come in and destroyed the genetics or the seed, and only Noah was perfect in his genetic generations. Then I read that, and every other culture says similar things. Then I look at the elite who were at the Great Pyramid today trying to, get its energy. They're into this stuff. They at least believe it. Then I think about Christians. They say demons are these fallen entities that are here on the earth, but you can't see them, and they love pain and destruction, and that they're there trying to screw up our lives. You're just saying that's real, basically, because you're saying reptoids, but you're saying they're interdimensional. So that's basically what the Christians say.
Basically.
Yeah, this is an interesting point, Alex, and a very important one, because, I've been saying this for so long over the years.
I didn't learn that in Sunday school.
So many people are arguing with each other. When you break it down, the fundamentals are the same. What Christians call fallen angels, the Nephilim, the demons, are what the Muslims call the jinn. And the Jews have their own bloody names for it as well, and it's what I call the reptilians or the non-human entities, the interdimensional entities. And when you look at the story in the Garden of Eden, I mean, it's a symbolic story which can be found in other cultures all around the world. Do people really think that the snake in the Garden of Eden was a snake that could talk, going along the ground? This
That's
is all
crazy.
symbolism. And this
interdimensional reptilians.
I was watching a series on the History Channel only this very week, which is called Ancient Aliens for Series.
Hell yeah.
I watched. It was all about the evidence, which I've been putting out for all these years, of the fact that there were non-human entities talked about in all the ancient cultures that interbred with humans, creating a hybrid bloodline. These Christians out there, these are the sons of God who interbred with the daughters of men. It comes up everywhere. And these entities are therefore possessable because there is a greater genetic and vibrational frequency compatibility between the possessing entity and the possessed hybrid bloodline.
Story checks out.
What happens is that these pedophiles, and it's in the genetics. They are attracted to sex with children everywhere.
What about my instinct to want to
lift the lid, and the cesspit is staggering.
Well, that's what I was about. What about my instinct? Every bone in my body wants to beat these people's brains out. I mean, I have to control myself. And I don't know why others don't have the instinct to want to go after these people, whoever, whatever. And I remember you.
This is a man who abused his wife in front of his kids, in front of their 3 kids, by the way. Mostly emotional, some physical. That's what she's alleging anyway. Please don't sue us, Alex Jones.
So if you notice what Alex Jones did there at the end, and this is connected to the Sandy Hook thing, it was a very, very slick incitement to violence, because he basically says, like, I can control myself, but I can understand how people go out there and start killing these pedophiles. And that's dangerous, right? That is dangerous speech. I'm not a free speech absolutist, or maybe I am. I don't know. What do you feel about this, babe?
Oh, well, I mean, the standard generally for freedom of speech is, don't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? You don't say something that's directly inciting to violence I think this really does walk that line, especially when you consider a guy actually did show up with a gun to combat ping pong. So there's that aspect of it. I mean, I will say I'm a little bit divided because I tend to be a free speech absolutist. But and like I know that typically, historically speaking, when the government starts, or not just the government, right? YouTube is not the government, but like in this case, the private companies that control our entire communications infrastructure, which does have the ability to restrict speech as well, in my opinion. Historically, you know, powerful actors have restricted the speech of the left, of the far left, more than the right and conspiracy theorists. But I also know that, like, that's not a norm that anybody respects. And just because they're restricting speech on one side doesn't mean they're going to treat the other side the same way. So in a certain sense, like, at what point do the ends justify the means? You know, if Alex Jones, if the far right is deplatformed for any amount of time before we are, maybe we should use that opening to our advantage. I don't know. What do you think, Tanz? Or
I have no problem with Alex Jones being deplatformed. You know, the question of free speech, I had an argument with some psychopath in a bar once. I don't know why all the crazies like me, but, you know, we're sitting here and he's some white lawyer guy and he's probably from like Brooklyn or some shit. And he's just like, yeah, you know, we can agree to disagree about politics, but, you know, as long as you believe in free speech. And I was like, yeah, but like not for Nazis. And he went off.
Oh, I bet.
Off. Because to him, no, that's like, I'm talking about red in the face, spitting, just crazy. I was like, whoa, you're nuts. But, you know, like, no, you can't say certain shit. I don't give a fuck. Nazis, no, you can't talk. Idiots like Alex Jones, you can't talk. I'm about to tell flat earthers to shut the fuck up too, because what are you people doing?
Yo, dead fucking ass. In the course of our research, Jamie and I watched a fucking hour and 6 minute long video. We'll play a clip later about these flat earth people. And both of us became fucking tankies watching that shit. We became round earth tankies watching this video. We're like, fuck these people. They cannot fucking say these words.
You're a couple of globe cucks.
I guess we are globe cucks. But yeah, like on this point of the deplatforming thing, I mean, it's a very abstract thing. And I do believe that there is some sort of danger in like this tendency to try to shut these folks down. That said, though, if you go on YouTube, as we did, and you put in these keywords like, you know, Alex Jones or like reptilians or ancient aliens or like pedophilic cultural or cultic sacrifice and shit like that, you still come up with like tons of videos. When I was trying to like find all these different crazy conspiracy theories, they're so like you punch in to YouTube and you can find 1,000 fucking videos about it. So it's nice, I suppose, that they're shutting down Alex Jones as like one person with a big platform, but it doesn't change the fact that this conspiracy culture is huge and everywhere, still on YouTube, still on even the airwaves with AM radio, right? Andy, you said coast to coast radio?
Yeah, Coast to Coast has conspiracy theories on it. I mean, I don't think this stuff should be shut down, but Alex Jones is particularly vile in terms of how he manipulates and lies, and also he doesn't believe in any of this stuff. This is like something that's a big difference between him and Icke. Like, I think Icke is a believer, but you can find audio of Alex Jones in the late 90s saying that Vladimir Putin is invading the United States right now, and we have to, all the patriots need to take up arms and defend their country just to make a name for himself. And then with each subsequent like U.S. era, he finds a new little niche for himself. So he was kind of like an anti-authoritarian in the 2000s with the 9/11 stuff and being against the police state. Like the idea of prison
planet, how he got his start.
Comes out of this idea, but now he loves the prison planet. He loves the police state.
Right.
Well, his ex-wife said he kind of got his start. He was like a civil liberties guy. It's kind of a libertarian, I would say, and she considers herself that as well, which is its own thing. But like, he was always into some conspiracy theories, and then he got more and more into it around 9/11, but he was never partisan for either party until Roger Stone came on the scene, at which point he became a mouthpiece for this right-wing populist movement as manifested by Trump now.
And for folks who don't know, Roger Stone is the dirty trickster that goes back to Nixon, a Republican operative, a really sketchy guy, and he's now involved with Trump and Alex Jones all the time. Andy, you want to say something about the backstory of David Icke?
Well, Alex Jones was always pretty right-wing. Like, he would always couch his anti-authoritarianism in these conspiracy theories about abortion, and the elite are trying to depopulate the world by, 2/3, and certainly always very anti-immigrant. But at the same time, he would be opposed to things like I-69, which is like this highway that was going from Mexico to Canada that's still under construction. The left opposed it because it would be bad for labor unions. It would make it easier to bypass unionized ports. But Alex Jones opposed it because he thought that we're going to have a North American union. We're going to have like one. It was all part of the NWO for him.
The Amero currency, right?
Right. But there was a point when the left and the Alex Jones libertarian right had this commonality, and some people would overlook the anti-immigration, anti-woman sentiments, but they're always there.
Yeah. Well, he's completely sold out his libertarian past and viewership at this point in time, seeing as he's basically functioning as a propaganda mouthpiece for the Trump administration. Also, for what it's worth, she's his ex-wife, probably has a bone to pick. She thinks that he believes all of it, and that she told me he's even like crazier and weirder in real life than he is on the show. So take that for what it's worth.
We'll never know, because I hope never to be in a room with Alex Jones. I think that dark energy might fucking wear off on me.
So speaking of believing it, David Icke, I think, does believe it, and his backstory is hilarious because he was a soccer player, a footballer,
a hooligan.
I don't know what team he was on, but in his post-career, he used a celebrity to be part of the Green Party in England. And he was, I believe, the spokesperson for the Green Party. This is unbelievable today, but some people in the Green Party are kind of wingnutty.
No way.
And he was seeing a psychic. And the psychic was just telling him progressively weirder things, having him meditate and hallucinate and stuff. And one day, he held a press conference for the Green Party. Unexpectedly, and he said that the world is controlled by intergalactic lizard people that are sucking our blood and harvesting our misery, and that led to his current career. And somehow he has tons of followers. Just this message speaks to a certain kind of person that are just ready to believe it. And if you read his books, which are sold in Barnes and Nobles and all across the country, by the way, if you go to the conspiracy theory section, that's what you'll find is this conspiracy theory are nonsense. Like, anyone with a little bit of critical thought, anyone who doesn't want to believe this would not believe it.
Yeah, I think so that actually ties to the point that you were making, right? When you go, you can ban all these people, but when you go online, you're still going to find this stuff. And I mean, the problem is that in this country, we have been so dumbed down just by the fact that schools don't teach critical thinking. We don't learn this, and I see it in my students, and it's that my students, I love my students, right? They're smart, but the critical thought sometimes is just like something is disconnecting, and I'm like, you're capable of this, but why have we not taught you this? And I think, unfortunately,
is this undergrads that you're teaching?
Undergrads, yeah. And I think, unfortunately, this is a trend across the country, and I will say some of these conspiracy theories I believed growing up, and I'm not dumb, but when you're trying to make sense of the world and you don't have all the information in front of you and you don't understand how systems work because nobody has ever broken this down to you or talked you through it or done any of these things with you, you're just like left out there to sort of weed through all this mess, and you got to pick the thing that makes the most sense.
Exactly. And what's out there and what's available right now, it's not Marxist theory, it's not anarchist thought, it's this shit that's on YouTube and all over the place. I want to take what you said and actually go one step further with it, because I used to teach apprentices in the trades before, and it wasn't even just that this stuff was all over the place, this conspiracy type thought. It was actually that I think by and large the smartest of all the students were the ones that were most likely to get into this shit, because
that's something you say in your pamphlet too, right?
They were right, like you say, like they were the people that had this sense that there was something fucked up with the world, and they were searching for it. And what they found, again, was not like a systemic critique of things. What they found was like, I smoked a bunch of weed and I looked at the back of a dollar bill, and then I went on YouTube and I found the flat earth shit. But they're smart kids, they just don't have the correct critical capacities, or maybe we're not doing enough right now in order to, put out our ideas and our movement.
Like exactly. Like what is it that you get when you look up stuff on YouTube? And this is where everybody goes,
Where this really, I think, came into the mainstream for me when I was younger was after September 11th. And if people remember the 9/11 truthers, they're still out there, but they used to be in the streets, and they used to actually show up at, real left events, like when I go see Chomsky or go to some protest or whatever with their banners and be haranguing people and fucking intervening and talking about the melting point of steel and controlled demolition and all this shit. And I think that was a very important moment because it showed how little understanding and critical thought there was left in the country, because 9/11 as a conspiracy theory kind of picked up from this vacuum of, the post-Cold War period when, there was the WTO anti-globalization movement, right? But that kind of even lacked a systemic critique too. So you had these people, mostly young men, who were just obsessed with this question. And it was always a question. There was nothing behind the question. It was, we're just asking questions.
If you're just asking questions, then you don't need any proof.
Right, exactly. And they just torture the data until like the data gave up, and they'd cherry pick this, that, and the other thing. But they were so, I don't know, they infected so much of the left, all the way up, I think, until 2008, because there was that real vacuum there. And 9/11 Truth was a way to interpret the world that made sense of all the crazy shit that was happening, especially when the Iraq War comes along, no blood for oil and WMD and all that stuff. So I think that was a really, really pernicious thing. And it's still around a bit, but I think it's more on YouTube now. I think people have moved on to more Illuminati, Bilderberg, sort of pedophile ring type conspiracy theories at this point.
Yeah, I think definitely the 9/11 stuff, like, I know I believed it because part of it was like an acknowledgement of the fact that like something systemic is wrong, right? Like there is some fucked up people who are doing some fucked up shit, but it's just like the target, what you see as the answer to that, or where that ends up is what's incorrect, but yeah, I think, sorry, I'm just gonna share this little story. When 9/11 happened, I was 16 years old, and I was in school, and they called us into the cafeteria, and they were like, they basically showed it on like a freaking TV, and so we're sitting here watching this, and I was like, what the fuck first of all, I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be bad, because people are gonna hate Muslims. Like, this is gonna be very bad. And the backlash was crazy.
I remember Sikh cab drivers were getting the shit kicked out of them all the time. Not even Muslim.
Not even Muslim. I'm just like, Jesus, like, really? Could you at least get your racism right? Fuck. But, yeah, I just remember, like, I called my dad because I was like, and I didn't, at this time, like, I didn't really see my dad that often. And I called him, and he was like, stop fucking talking right now. He's like, I'm going to pick you up early. I'm picking you up from school. So I was like, okay. And he picked me up, and he put me in the car, and he was like, you don't say shit about this. And then he proceeded to go into all these conspiracy theories.
Oh, man.
So you don't say shit, but here's what
really happened. It was the Jews.
Right.
This is what he talked. He's like, did you know that all the Jews that were working in that building, how come no Jews died? Because they got a phone call the day before not to go to work. I was just, and unfortunately at 16, you're just like, all right, I guess this is true. But I vacillated between George Bush did it, the Jews did it. And it's like, when I look back on it now, it's like these two things didn't even make any damn sense, like, together. But I was saying them, right? Because I was 16, but you want an answer. You don't believe what the government is telling you. You don't believe what mainstream media is telling you, because people are lying to you, but you just don't know what the lie is.
Well, you're definitely not the only person who's felt that way. And I feel like maybe, do you think conspiracy theories have gone more mainstream since 9/11? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Like, what do you think?
Well, I was horrified when I started looking into this flat earther shit, because I'm just like this is another level to me. Like, it's so many people that believe this, and I feel like it is like more of a mainstream thing, because I remember, back in the day, it was like this stuff wasn't everywhere, like, I think you're right. 9/11 really was a sort of like a critical moment in all of this. But for most of my life growing up, at least when I was into this, when I was a teenager, it was me and like my 4 friends sitting here bored talking about different looking shit up. Like, it wasn't everywhere. But now, like, you just meet so many people who just say the dumbest shit, and you're like, oh wow, like you really believe this. I'm afraid.
That's fair, and it's the mainstream thing. I think is interesting because even off of YouTube, because we're really talking about the fringes, and the fringes are coming closer to reality.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that under Obama, and I'm not like standing Obama, he's a fucking war criminal and a neoliberal hack. But under Obama, the birtherism thing became a conspiracy that, like, not a majority, but a large minority of Americans believed. Yeah. And now even, with Trump, who traffics in conspiracy theories all the fucking time, like, not for nothing has he been on the Alex Jones show and had Roger Stone working for him, calls the Mueller investigation a witch hunt and a hoax and whatever. But, like, Trump was a huge birther. And now the liberals themselves have, these sort of vast conspiracy theories about this Russian collusion, where Putin, like we talked about last episode, like personally hacked this stuff. I read something by Jonathan Chait, who's probably the biggest asshole in the entire world. And he was saying that there's a 10 to 20% chance that when Donald Trump went to Moscow in 1987, that he was turned by the KGB into a Manchurian candidate. This is in the fucking New York Magazine. Should we?
So this stuff is it's progressed. I would say there's been a certain progression, a certain mainstreaming to the point where stuff that used to be extremely fringe is like now just a part of the Republican base who voted for Trump. Like Alex Jones is tight with him and played a role in his rise for sure, which is fucking crazy.
And not to mention too that it's even more institutional than that, because think about how the Republicans and the right wing in general gets out of the whole climate change catastrophe that's coming is they literally say that it's a hoax, right? They say it's a hoax by the climate scientists who are all somehow in collusion. Just like, according to the 9/11 truthers, you had hundreds of people who for like months were carrying controlled demolition fucking shit into the trade centers with nobody noticing for fucking all this time. And then, secretly blew up the thing after the planes crashed, whatever. And then nobody spilled the beans ever since then. The idea that climate change is a hoax and all these scientists are lying to get and getting paid off. Like, there's nobody coming out and being like, oh, I got paid fucking, $100,000 to make up this data about carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
But also, my question with the climate change stuff and also with the, again, flat earthers, my thing is just like, who are the people behind this and what are they getting out of lying to us about this shit? Like, what would anyone be getting out of fucking lying to us about the earth being round?
Well, and also, how would so many people lie? Like, Benjamin Franklin, who, if you're talking to like a patriotic conspiracy theorist, you can bring up this quote from Benjamin Franklin because they might like that. 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. For 9/11 to have been an inside job, you would have to have at least a few hundred people who would just never say a word about it.
Would die without a confession, a deathbed confession.
Well, I think that is a good segue into this next video clip.
We've been teasing the fuck out of Flat Earth.
Because, it's easy to sit here and talk shit about the Flat Earth people, all right? But, like, I think they deserve at least a chance for us to listen to what they have to say. So
I also want to laugh, so let's do it.
Yes.
The picture, and they got lazy.
If the Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference, there must exist a curvature drop of 8 inches times the mile when you square the mile.
It gets
1
good.
mile means there should be an 8-inch curvature drop. 2 miles, 2 times 2 times 8.
It's just
32.
Math.
That's 32-inch drop. 3 miles would be a 72-inch
Can't argue with
drop.
math.
And this would exponentially continue. Here's the longest bridge in the world. The Danyang Kongchon Grand Bridge in China, 102.4 miles long. There should exist nearly 7,000 feet of curvature drop in that bridge. 7,000 foot curvature drop. Do you see it? It ain't there. Look at the horizon. It's flat.
Okay. So, Andy, go back to the name of the bridge. This is why we picked this. Okay. So the guy in the video is not only a fucking flat earth idiot, but he's like, the name of the bridge is the Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge in China.
The Ching Chong Bridge.
The guy's like, look at the damn Ching Chong Ding Dong Bridge. It's 400,000 feet. whatever. Like, God.
Like I keep trying, like we're watching this video last night and I keep trying to refute what they're saying and on their own terms, but I'm like, wait, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Cause it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. There's a one part in the video, and this is where Jamie and I became round earth tankies, when they were showing videos of Antarctica.
Well, first, we're getting to that. Oh, well, yeah, that's good too. Okay. Well, first of all, on what you said before, like, they're saying that there's so much money to be made by like NASA and scientists for like propagating this conspiracy theory.
Right.
They're like, the budget of NASA is like $16 billion a year. I'm like, do you know what that is compared to the fucking military budget?
We actually
like less than 1%.
No, but it's even better because I remember the numbers. It was the NASA was $36 billion. And so I was like, oh, babe, let me look up what the world like domestic product or world gross product is. Right? All the money in the entire world. Yeah. And it is $1.7 trillion. So this entire scheme, as Andy pointed out, as we've all pointed out, would take a massive cover up like of people who just inexplicably, want to get involved in a conspiracy to do a round earth. Like the amount of money, I did the calculations, is like 0.001% of world GDP in order to cover up the flat earth reality.
And they've got this video of Neil deGrasse Tyson, who they hate, obviously.
And
they're like using the CGI animation to like make it rain on him in the background. And I'm like, dude, like, do you think he's wearing $1,000 suit right now? You want to like go to his house and see what it looks like? Like,
okay, I hate to rain on your globe cuck parade, but there's something that goes on in conspiracy theory circles where there'll be like an extreme wing. And there'll be, so conspiracy theories obviously draw people in through like very reasonable sounding premises and like, why don't we ask these questions? And then it leads you down a narrative that's basically more or less science fiction. Like they start asking questions and giving answers in a way. And this is something that, scam artists do. Stefan Molyneux does this. It's just a way of stringing certain kinds of gullible people along. And even not so gullible people can be brought in. But one thing that people, these conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and even Joe Rogan, who believes in a fair number of conspiracy theories, will say about the flat earthers is that these are the crazy conspiracy theorists. We're asking serious questions about things that maybe the media doesn't want to cover because the media is controlled by certain interests. So, there'll be this striation of like the crazy wing represented by the flat earthers and the David Icke people. And then the more moderate, and then someone like Alex Jones ends up coming off as a moderate compared to some. So this is the danger. But also, a lot of people are just ready to believe in the flat Earth. And how do you talk to them? I know. And
I should add, by the way, Neil deGrasse Tyson is famous, probably rich. Most of these scientists make $60,000 a year. Yeah. Are you really gonna propagate a global conspiracy so you can make $60,000 a year? Or I guess the idea is they made a fake space shuttle and then they pocketed the difference in what it would have cost to make a real shuttle. That's the only way I can make this math make sense.
All of these scientists pocketed them.
Yeah, of $36 billion, all the scientists in the world got a chunk, which would probably be $40 each.
It's a very modest grift.
But there's a different element to that too, and you see it throughout this flat Earth video, which is supposed to just be, similar to what Andy was saying, this fringe but just asking questions sort of compendium of different reasons why we should question the round Earth. But here and there, you'll see pop up the Illuminati eye, frequently throughout the entire thing. So clearly the people that are propagating this flat Earth theory are caught up in a whole bunch of other conspiracy theories too, right?
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
And I think the way that a lot of these things connect is towards the end of this flat Earth video. I would say we'd link to it in the show notes, but we won't. Nobody should watch this. Do not ever watch it. We watched it so you didn't have to. But towards the end of it, they're giving the reasons why there would be this conspiracy, which is very interesting, why they believe that this is being propagated.
This has always been my question.
And what they're saying is that heliocentric world, right? One where the Earth is at the center, gives us meaning and it makes our lives valuable. And the puppet masters out there, the people who are perpetrating this hoax, want us to feel small and feel insignificant. But if we believe that the flat Earth is at the center of all of creation, that we can actually have this sort of self-awareness and this power to control our world and to understand things in a way that they want to take away from us. And I think that right there is an element of so much of this conspiracy theory stuff, which we've been dancing around, we've been joking about, but I think when we get to talking about your pamphlet, we're really going to analyze what this does for people and how it functions.
Yes. I'm sorry I cut you off earlier, babe, because I think it's very important to understand exactly how Sean and I became tankies for the round earth. So there were a number of parts of the video that I think really brought us in this journey. The first concerned Antarctica. And, the way we understand Antarctica, it is a small continent at the southern pole of the globe.
It's all lies.
But,
I got documents. It's coded.
Like they have some different ideas about what Antarctica is, babe.
Yeah, I mean, I keep an open mind on things, and it was like 30 minutes into the video, I was like, you know what, maybe they're onto something. I myself have never been to space. I've never actually seen it. They might be going around literally harassing astronauts. Like, you could say what you want about, like, the U.S. space program or whatever, but if you're an astronaut, you're like straight up heroic. You did something risky. You went into space, and these fucking assholes are going into like these astronauts and be like, what do you think this video means? And they're like, fuck you, I went to space. They're like, no, you didn't. And you see this guy punch the astronaut.
It's Buzz Aldrin.
By Buzz Aldrin. Which, like, he was really asking
And you know
for
what?
it.
More power to him. You're an astronaut, you go to space, and some fucking douchebag with like fucking greasy hair and all fucking dumpy comes into your office.
No,
and
you think you're doing a normal interview to promote your book about being an astronaut or whatever, and this guy accosts you like, you didn't really go to space, did you? Prove it.
Boom, punch him right in
and
the
like,
face.
I don't normally believe in resolving interpersonal conflict with violence, but like this guy really asked for it.
But the Antarctica shit was incredible because they're like, everyone thinks it's a small continent, but have you ever looked at it? Has anyone ever actually been there? It's a 200 to 300 foot wall of ice that's impenetrable that represents the edge of the flat Earth.
Yeah, this is why, because the problem with flat Earth theories throughout history has been, why don't ships fall off the edge, right?
Yeah.
And the answer for them is because Antarctica is actually a ring of ice around the perimeter of the disk that we all live on.
Yep, the disk with it's a bubble, really. Don't watch it. Don't get farther into this. I want to touch on something that we've also been flirting with a bit. You've mentioned anti-Semitism, Tanz, a whole bunch, but I think there is a thread within this Illuminati theory and all of these conspiracy theories. You mentioned Jews and 9/11. That is fundamentally anti-Semitic. So this next clip that we have right here is gross. It's from something called the Educational Ministry of Hebrew Israelite Truth, which does not sound too reputable to me. But we have this clip here to talk about where the kind of end point of these theories can take you.
Jewish Khazars are not a spiritual people. They perceive the religion of Judaism as a way to reform society at large. And from Judaism, they created Kabbalah, the black magic occult, and the Illuminati, not to mention their involvement in the enslavement of Black America. But before they flocked to America to make more money off of us, they reaped some havoc in Russia. Now, a group of Jews got together under the influence of the Kabbalah and the Illuminati and believed that they were the supreme beings and were to rule the world and ultimately destroy all else in it. You have to start small. So they founded what's called Bolshevism, and they chose Lenin as their leader. Who better to lead them than a satanic Khazar Jew? So from the pure Torah came Judaism, then the black magic Kabbalah, then the Illuminati and Freemasonry. Then comes Bolshevism. Now, Bolshevism is a secret society consisting of powerful atheist Jews and followers of them who sought to take over the world.
So what's your take on this? And what is its functional role in society, would you say?
The anti-Semitism, you mean?
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know. I wish I had an answer for this. I have no idea. I know that it's everywhere. I grew up hearing a lot of shit that's anti-Semitic, and I don't know how this has spread so damn far, to be honest.
I think towards the end of the show, I've got a take on it that I get from a Marxist theorist named Moishe Postone, who I think puts his finger on a very interesting question, which is, why does modern anti-Semitism so pernicious, as you said, but also why is it so adaptable to different things? So the Jews could both be these like these bankers, like these Rothschild capitalists,
Right.
but they could also be the Bolsheviks at the same time, like standing behind the scenes and controlling these things. I think that there's something important there about these anti-Semitic aspects of it that I think we should definitely unpack. But let's get to your pamphlet, because I think that anti-Semitism is a part of how to overthrow the Illuminati. You get that in there and you isolate it, but there's a larger argument at work, right?
So yeah, just to start on a very basic level, where did the idea for the pamphlet come from, and who was its intended audience?
Yeah. So the pamphlet actually came about because a group of us were talking about, this is why it came about. Because when I came into leftist politics, I still believed the 9/11 stuff. And I didn't, when I said this to people, I was shocked that people didn't believe it, to be honest. I was like, you don't think 9/11 was a conspiracy? You don't think Bush did it? What do you mean?
Right.
And they were like, no. And I was like, I don't understand. I was like, have you seen the $20 bill? Have you seen it? But yeah, and so it was, and I have to say, I think the way that people responded to me was not helpful, because they were just like, that's fucking dumb. It was like, oh God, roll your eyes and walk away, without actually investigating why I believed what I believed, right?
Right.
And so I had to do a little bit of work on my own to sort of figure out, well, if it's not this, then what is it? You know, why did this actually happen? And I began, when I did that, and it's literally the thing that helped me was reading history, reading the history of capitalism, reading about how these things developed.
Yes.
And so when I started to do that more, I was just like, wait a minute, this actually doesn't make sense. And I was like, you know what? Well, actually, people encouraged me then to write something about my own experience of being a teenager and, you know, believing in this stuff and why I believed it and why I don't believe it. And so I wrote that little piece and we put it up somewhere online. And from there, other people that I was working with at the time got the idea to, well, let's do this pamphlet that can be for young young people of color who are living in the hood who believe this stuff. Because, particularly then, I think, and this was like a while ago, this was like at least like 8 years ago, but particularly at that time, this was the demographic that really was like into the Illuminati stuff, and into conspiracy theory.
Jay-Z and Beyonce were satanic Illuminati subjects.
Well, all of, apparently it's like everybody in the music industry. If you're in the music industry, you have some connection to the Illuminati.
You have made a deal with the devil on some level, right?
Well, there you go.
That's why my SoundCloud rap hasn't made a hit yet. I'm not paying off the right people.
And then you hear also, like, I always would hear all these stories from like random people who will be like, yeah, my boy got a record deal and then this happened. The Illuminati hit him. So you always get like these little bits in there, and if you're somebody who is just, which I think is most people, to be honest with you, we hear stuff and we don't filter it. We're just like, oh, okay, this must be true because this person that I know said it. Or, oh, this must be true because I'm watching this video. Like, I think we have a tendency in the United States to, we don't ask enough questions. We just believe whatever the fuck we see. And there's a lot of people like this, we don't check our sources. Like, I see people on my Facebook, people I grew up with, who post stuff, and I'm just like, no, why do you think this is real? Like, why do you think this website is true? Like, why do you think it's like legitimate? But there's no question of like, what is legitimate, what is not, and you just don't vet stuff the way that we should.
Yeah, I see leftists posting total bullshit all the time.
Yeah.
And what I really liked about your piece is that you didn't condescend to these people at all.
Right.
You said like some of the smartest people in the hood these days are into this, and you're touching on something. You're grasping at something. The world is fucked up, right? It's not an illusion that things are screwy, but there's another way to understand it. Yeah.
And it makes sense on some level when people start to figure out that the American dream is bullshit, right? Like, especially people from marginalized communities.
Yeah.
You grow up being told, if you work really hard and like, pass out your mixtape on the street or whatever, you can succeed and be a big star. And you start to realize that's not true. So when you see somebody, that Horatio Alger figure, whether it's Jay-Z or Beyonce or whoever, and you're like, what do you have that I don't have?
Right.
Yeah.
You start to want to explain it some other way.
Yeah. And I think also it's important to keep in mind that the people that, at least before, I don't know about now, but the people before that were really into conspiracy theories tended to be people who were like, you know what? this whole like blame the poor. I mean, they're not thinking this way, but it's actually a rejection of the blame the poor ideology.
Yeah, I
you know,
think
that
so,
is
yeah.
so pervasive in the United States and has been for so long. Where it's like, if you're poor, it's like blame the poor for everything, for their own problems. But these are actually people who are saying, but something else is going on here.
Right.
You know, and it's important to note that you can say that, but by believing in these conspiracies, you can sort of be grasping at that, but at the same time still have this contradiction of like, you know, well, you need to make better decisions, or you need to do what, you know what I mean? So this exists, but I think it is something important to note, at least.
There is a rational kernel within the mystical shell.
Yeah.
Always. So how have you gotten this pamphlet out to people, and what has the response been like? Has it been hitting people the way you want it to? Like Sean said, like I really respect how much respect you give to the people who believe these things, and probably because you used to believe them too. It's on an empathetic level. You don't have to be dumb, you know. And I even saw you or some of your co-authors engaging with people in the comments, and I thought that was really rad. So how has that been for you?
So I have to say, you know, we made this pamphlet and, you know, gave it out to people that we knew, people who wanted it. We put it online, and then I forgot about it because I was just like, all right, what is the freaking pamphlet gonna do? I was like, maybe somebody will read it at some point. I don't know if it's going to break anything down to anyone. I don't even know who the hell's going to get, you know, a hold of this thing. And I totally forgot about it. And I didn't go on the website. I still haven't been on the website.
Oh, we have.
Yeah, I don't look at what is going on with it. But what was interesting to me is that I met a few people through the years who have been like, oh, you wrote that? Because, you know, I use that with these kids that I work with who all believe in conspiracy theories. Or I use that in like this youth detention center.
Oh, nice.
That's what one guy told me. He's like, you know, we have it in the youth detention center, and we, you know, all these kids read it and stuff, and we talk about it.
Oh,
I just met somebody recently who he is a teacher he's an adjunct at a community college in Jersey, and he messaged me on Facebook, and he was like, hey, did you write this thing? Because I use this in my class all the time to talk about why young people of color would believe in this and what an alternative is. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that this is a thing, you know, like, so I was actually really surprised that there were people that picked it up and were doing things with it.
I was pretty enthusiastic about the pamphlet. I gave it to a bunch of people. There was one guy who used to table in my neighborhood with like Black Panther, Black nationalist literature. Yeah. And I said, hey, you know, I've got a bunch of zines. If you want, I'll just give them to you for free and you can sell them or whatever. And I gave him something about the Flatbush. It was called the Flatbush Uprising.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember that.
About like these small riots in Flatbush, you know, 4 or 5 years ago when
it was when Kamani Gray was
killed.
That's when Jumaane Williams himself yelled at me, but go on.
And I gave him Overcoming the Illuminati, and I came back a couple days later and said, how'd it do? What'd you think? And he's like, well, you know, I didn't like the Flatbush one too much, but I really like the Overcoming the Illuminati one. Ooh. I think he didn't read it. I think he just liked the cover and he didn't read it.
Overcoming the Illuminati.
Yeah. So he asked me for more copies of it, and I said, sure. I gave him 10 more copies. I also had a young coworker at this restaurant that I worked at, and most of my coworkers a lot of them were like countercultural radical people who had like radical politics, but they didn't do anything on the job. Like that was just where they worked, and all of their stuff was activism somewhere else. Right. But I worked with one young black cook there who was really fed up with how she was being treated, and we talked a lot about how shitty the management was there. And we had like the exact same complaints in class politics basically, but I had read Marx and she hadn't, and she believed in the Illuminati and I don't. So I had the perfect thing to give her, and hopefully it made an impact on her.
So if you forgot about your pamphlet, just remember that other people haven't. When that intervention first came out, and I think all of the co-authors, including yourself, I thought it was an amazing intervention because again, like we've been saying, it hit all the right points. It directed these real complaints to where they should really be directed, which is towards the abstract system of domination, as Alex Jones says, that is capitalism, right? Which does not operate out in the open, right? It seems like it's natural and that it's free, but actually what these people are confronting is a social system that is based on exploitation and alienation, and they're trying to grasp at it because they sense it, but they don't have the words to express it except to fall into this conspiracy mindset where there has to be something blocking me. And as you said, I think quite rightly, there's a lot of consequences to conspiracy theories in terms of practical activity. It's not only that there's a lift yourself up by your bootstraps sort of thing. There's the rabbit hole thing where people fall down into like all these videos and they don't do anything except watch more and more 9/11 videos to get more and more data on stuff. But ultimately, these theories, these conspiracy theories, if there really is this all-powerful, maybe Jewish, maybe not, conspiracy, this cabal that's been running society for thousands of years.
I'm not saying shit. Oh, P.S. Full disclosure, my grandpa was in fact a scientist who played a major role in putting fluoride in all the water. So, you might want to take what I say about the Illuminati with a little grain of salt.
We just lost our John Bircher audience. The outcome of it is paralysis, ultimately, because if there is this all-consuming, all-powerful network of people that spans anywhere from 200 to 500 to 2,000 to a million years, interdimensionalism. What do you do? You can't do anything.
Well,
you literally cannot do anything.
Like you noted in the pamphlet, what people do about it often manifests in these lone wolf acts of violence.
Right, call it
which
ping
are
pong.
Also not very productive. And it's a good way to get one person killed and not make an impact on the world. But before we get too far into discussing the many excellent impacts of the pamphlet, you want to give us a brief outline of its actual content and what's in it?
Oh, sweet Jesus, I haven't looked at this in years. All right. So
I mean, I read it yesterday.
So
you want to give us a brief outline?
Yeah, I mean, it goes
Remind
through,
her what she wrote.
It goes through like the different elements of the Illuminati conspiracy
like
theories.
the different conspiracy theories.
Yeah, where the Illuminati actually came from, like the original actual society in the world of these Enlightenment thinkers and people sort of in the rising bourgeoisie class who wanted to overthrow the feudal aristocracy and become this like enlightened capitalist democracy, quote unquote democracy or whatever. It goes through like the reasons people have to believe this, and then it goes through the reasons why it is wrong and not helpful, and then tells you basically here's a better analysis to understand what's wrong with the world. And I think it's very effective how it goes through thing by thing. I wish that I had read this before I tried to read the Moishe Postone, because
That's my bad.
It really does do a good job describing some Marxist concepts that are very abstract and confusing without using Marxist jargon.
Which is very important, by the way.
That is not the part that I wrote.
Okay, but still, like, it's important because, like, if you start off with Moishe Postone or if you start off with Marx himself, it's going to be probably like a 90% chance that you stop within, the first couple paragraphs. What is this crap? So we need a way to popularize these ideas and take the jargon out and put them into like vernacular, you know, so people can actually understand it.
Like, what the hell does this shit really mean?
Right. What is alienation? What is abstraction? Reification? Value, right?
Yeah. Marx has a lot to teach us, but not always the clearest writer. And I'm saying that as somebody who went to an Ivy League college but did not study Marx there. So, like, if I find it hard to understand, I feel like most people probably would.
I agree with you 100%. I still have a hard time understanding Marx.
The amount of time that I put into reading Marx when I had the opportunity to do so and the time to do so was substantial, just to get a grounding in the entire theory and understand all this jargon and understand how things connect together dialectically.
Yeah, and not everybody wants to read that shit. It's fucking boring. I sit down to read Marx and I want to rip my fucking eyeballs out.
If you hate Marx, try Hegel.
Like, oh God. I don't even want to go there. But and I think this is something that I'm really critical of the left with, because when I first came into politics, I had people bombarding me with fucking read Marx, you have to read this, you have to read that, and I'm just like, dude, I don't fucking know what any of this is saying. What the fuck are you talking about? And it's hard when you're not most Americans, we don't fucking read. When I got out of, first of all, I barely read in college, and when I got out of college, I read like maybe a fucking newspaper. But I wasn't like reading all the time. It's not something that you're always doing. And so when you're not in the habit of always reading, and then somebody says to you, well, in order to be a good leftist, you have to read all these books by
all
this guy named
three volumes
Marx.
of Capital and the Grundrisse.
You're just like, what the hell? Like, I am not capable of this,
But once you have read this stuff and you do understand it, I think you have a very special gift that you can choose to share with other people if you so choose and if you're good at explaining it in an understandable way, which is not easy.
Yeah.
So that's like one reason why I really liked this pamphlet.
I appreciate that you call it a gift, but it's not like The Secret, and it's not like Santa Claus. You know, it is actually a method of analysis that I know you're being hyperbolic, right? But like, it is this method of analysis that can synthesize and understand why these conspiracies happen, why they are arising, but ultimately incomplete. And so, yes, those of us who have gone through that work and have done that do owe it to other people to try to popularize this shit. And again, this is why the pamphlet is fucking great. And every time like you confront somebody who hasn't seen this theory or understood it before, don't immediately tell them to go read all 3 volumes of Capital.
Exactly.
Like, start them off easy, you know, like fucking
start them off by fucking talking to them.
There you go, as a real human being, right?
Exactly.
And
go to the beach with them.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, that's been part of my mission for a while because, you know, I was a writer before I was a leftist. And I was like, oh, what am I going to write about? I guess the shit around me, like sex and parties and music and boys or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when I became a leftist, I already had a writing career. So, and I was already pretty good at writing for a mainstream audience. So part of me was like, oh, what authority do I have to write about this shit that I'm just starting to learn about? But also, you know, I've read some tracts from some very learned Marxists who maybe went to grad school, and they're basically unreadable.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Shout out to learned Marxists who went to grad school. No one like that in this room. So, like, whenever I start to worry that I'm not one of them, I'm like, you know what? I have a thing that they don't have, which is the ability to write stuff that people want to read.
That is a good thing to not be like them. I'm just
Yeah. And as Big Bill Hayward once said, I may not have read Marx's Capital, but I have the marks of capital all over me. So there is something intuitive about the whole thing. Jamie, I think that as a Gothic American, you had a particular passage in this pamphlet that you found very evocative. Shout out to the Lit Crit guy, by the way, who is into Gothic Marxism. Lit Crit guy, we are going to have you on the show because Jamie is your biggest fan. But go ahead with the quote.
Yeah. So I just wanted to spotlight a few quotes from the pamphlet that I thought were very good. And you guys took the best parts of Marx and gave them an update and made them even better.
Marx 2.0.
And this quote gives a good idea.
Marx Reloaded.
Like it takes some of Marx's imagery was very evocative, right? Like he was writing around the time that Gothic literature was really big, so he used that to make it sort of more interesting for people and more evocative. And I think you've taken that and given a really good update on it. So let me just read it. Capital is not a conspiracy of aliens. It's an alien we create. It's not just Jay-Z or George W. Bush. We have all sold our souls and our bodies to the devil, but it is a devil we create with our own hands. It can do nothing without us. Our bodies are its arms, its legs, its reproductive organs, and its brains. Therefore, we have the power to end it. Throughout history, poor and working people have struggled to limit how much labor capital sucks from them. They've tried to change the rules of the game or stop playing it altogether.
Hell yeah.
And I really like the way you took that imagery of the vampire and updated it with aliens because, as we all know, aliens are quite big on the conspiracy theory scene.
Yeah.
And also in the non-conspiracy scene, in the Marxist scene, because I think Comrade Communicator would be pretty upset that we're platforming the Posadism of fools on this episode with David Icke and Alex Jones. But I digress.
Indeed. And it's just like a really good metaphor for capital because it is kind of hard to understand it. What? It's like, it's not a thing. It's not money. It's not the bosses. It's not the ruling class. It's just this complex web of relationships between people and commodities or the objects that embed all these different abstract concepts of labor and shit. And it's basically everything but us, only we're part of it too. It's like growing inside of us. So that was pretty cool.
And we create it and it's fucking us.
We reproduce it every time we go to work, every time we go shopping, every time we go home even, right? Because the home is also a commodity. That's what's, I think, powerful is that when you get to this level of abstraction that Marx managed to get himself to, you do get into something that is beyond any individual capitalist, beyond any individual person, beyond even the workers and the capitalists themselves. You get to the law of value. which is a process. It's this moving contradiction, as he calls it. And that is beyond the imperatives that imposes upon humanity, is beyond the control of every single person, whether they're a worker, a capitalist, or a politician even, right? And that, I think, is sort of what people are grasping towards, is that there is this force that exists that is all powerful. Like, let's be clear, like, if you don't go to work, you will starve and you will die, or you'll at least be homeless, right? Yeah. It is all powerful. It sets these incentives and these imperatives for us, and we do not have control over it. There's a real reason why people have these conspiracy theories, and you mentioned it before, right? Like with people in the hood who are like, you know, why hasn't this happened to me? Like, I'm poor, like, why the fuck, what's stopping me from doing this, right? And it's clearly there's something there, right? But it's way more complicated than that. There's a small cabal of people out there who are like controlling everything.
So yeah, I really like the resistance to blaming bad people or even bad ideas for something that's completely structural yet hidden. Because I think a lot of the rhetoric we're seeing today with this mainstream wave, or increasingly mainstream wave, of left populist sentiment in the US really stops at blaming the elites, the millionaires and the billionaires,
the 1%,
right? or finance, or the bankers, or the big, quote unquote, big corporations, which, like, I don't know, Bernie and friends tend to focus on. We hear from a lot of social democrats who just want to return us to like the golden age of capitalism, where these people are sort of kept on a leash and everything works out.
It'd be like Norway,
right. Yeah, just without the Jim Crow type aspects, you know. We'll take those out.
But that's like, it's like, no, it goes further than that, and the invisible character of capital is really important. And I think you describe it in a really good metaphor when you guys write, quote, "Gravity can't be identified and touched, but it can be felt in the relation between planets. Similarly, you can't put your finger on capital in any one place, but it is present in the relations between people and asserts a powerful force on them. Illuminati theorists feel this force at work in society, but identify it incorrectly." And then a little further down, you say, "To end this situation, we will have to do more than attack individual members of the bourgeoisie. We will have to attack the system of capitalist social relations as a whole." Boom.
Looking back at this stuff, which again, I haven't read it so long, but like looking at it, I'm just like, yeah, you know, we have to stress this. Like, it's not about the individual. So even when we're like railing against Trump, you know, because so many people are like, well, Trump is, you know, we just get rid of Trump. No, if we get rid of Trump, everything stays the fucking same. It doesn't change, you know? And so looking back at this and reading it, it just sort of reminds me of the fact that like we have to always be talking about systemic issues and how things are systemic, because when you don't get it anywhere else. You don't learn that shit in school. You don't learn that shit from talking to your neighbor or your mom or whoever, because we're so individualistic, and in some ways it's understandable, right? We go through the world as individuals. So we're not thinking about how all these things connect and, you know, the systems that are in place. But yeah, I think really, you know, breaking down when you're talking to people, just whoever, every day, you know, you come across people, you're talking to them about what's happening politically, which I think that is a conversation that I think comes, at least what I've noticed, comes up more now increasingly than ever before. Like, I went to the fucking bank and some dude, my banker, was talking to me about Jordan Peterson, and I'm just like,
oh my God,
what the fuck is going on right now?
Was
you know,
he pro or against?
Oh no, he loved him.
Okay.
Loved him, but
quit that bank.
Yeah, but you know, but I had a good conversation with him, and then I was like, look, you know, like I didn't tell him this, but in my head, I'm like, all right, you're clearly fucking dumb on certain issues.
Like that lawyer guy.
But, you know, I told him, I was like, you know what? Why don't you, as a place to start, watch this documentary, The 13th? Not that I think that is like the greatest documentary in the world. I have lots of critiques of it. However, it does a good thing, right? And it's a place to start with certain people. I mean, if you got a Jordan Peterson motherfucker telling you things like, hey, Black and Latino people, and he's Latino. Black and Latino people are the ones that do all the crime. So I believe this. You know, it's like, you have to break things down for people in a way that's like digestible. You can't direct them to go read fucking Capital. Go read this. No, like use that stuff that's out there that we you know, criticize the liberals, and we do, you know, we're always critical of everyone. But I'm like, if the left would just fucking stop for a second and look at what's out there and see how you can use it. Everything has pieces that you can use.
Yeah, it's always a bad moment, and I think most of us have had this moment at some point in our political development where you look at the left, you realize that they're right about most things, and then you look at who these people are who are right about the things, and you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do with you?
Well, you mentioned populism,
Yeah.
right? Populism is an interesting thing because populism can be either right or it can be left.
Right.
It is, again, similar to conspiracy theories, a grasping at the reality, the systemic structures, but without actually getting there. So if you're a right populist, you believe that there's a cultural elite, cultural Marxists or professors or the liberal elite or politicians or the state or whatever it is that's holding down what would otherwise be a just and decent system for everybody.
Right.
If you're a left populist, you believe very similar things, that there is a banker elite out there, that there's the Koch brothers, that there is just like corruption and greed that's standing in the way of us having like some sort of, what would otherwise be a decent life for everybody. And where we leftists differ from populists is that we go farther than that and say it's not enough to blame the millionaires and the billionaires and the 1%, but that they are part of an actual system that we need to confront, directly, understand and confront directly. So, I agree with you guys. Like, we have to start where people are at. And I think left populism is way better than right populism and certainly better than liberalism, right? But it is our task, I think, to take people who are already sympathetic to that bankers, 1% shit and try to pull them over to a more systemic critique. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere with left populism.
Yeah.
And just to push back a little bit, we were talking about how, it's not about individuals and it's systematic. There's a danger in that, in absolving individuals, and as bad as it is to just focus on the bankers or the billionaires or the elites.
He's gonna stand Jamie Dimon right here.
We also have to recall. We also have to keep bringing up that there is a tension between ourselves and our landlord and ourselves and our bosses. And just because they're a small landlord, they only own one building or two buildings, and just because they only own one or two.
They own a small business.
Yeah, right. Just because they're a small business doesn't mean there's not an exploitative relationship there. And that relationship isn't necessarily immoral. They're not doing it because they're bad people. But there's a tension there that can only be resolved through a deep questioning and reevaluation of value in general.
Class struggle.
And that's not a populist message, though. The populist message is that the small capitalists are the good ones. Right. That's what Alex Jones will say.
Yeah, I think so. That is really interesting. It reminds me a lot about the conversations I have with students about police, right? So, in my classes, I try to bring up policing a lot. We talk about what is policing as a system. And the thing is, I made the mistake when I first started teaching of just standing up and railing against the police and being like, I fucking hate all cops and fuck all that, and the thing is, and even when you have to remember, I'm in a classroom with majority students of color who are from New York City, and a lot of them have family members who are cops, and you're going to get that. You're going to get the pushback of like, well, my uncle owns a small business, or, my brother is a cop, or this. And I think it's also important, or what I have found is important when you're talking to people is like, look, those individuals, we're not saying that they're horrible as people. They're not like evil to their core. And every landlord, my aunt is a fucking landlord. She owns a fucking her own house.
One of the few ways in New York City to actually survive is to buy like a 3-family house and live in the basement.
Because if you're like, those are the only two choices under capitalism.
Right.
You can be exploited or you can become an exploiter. And that's the American dream,
and
right?
So, I think it's important to point that out and to be like, look, I don't care. Like, your family, I'm not telling you your family is like all evil. They could be great neighbors. They could be great friends. They could be a great uncle, but they're a part of a system that is fucked up. So let's talk about that system, right? And I think a lot of times on the left, we get so caught up in our own shit and wanting to be the smart guy in the fucking room all the time that we just want to rail at everybody and be like, how did you not understand this? And it's because fucking you're talking to people who they know individual people who are like this. So when you say these things to them, it doesn't fucking make sense. You have to present it in a way that fucking makes sense.
That said, it is very funny when Elon Musk gets mad on Twitter. So I suppose it's a bit of a dialectic.
He's a closet Posadist anyways. He's a socialist, as he said. Or an anarchist. I forget where he ended
We'll
up.
see. So I just had a couple more questions from the pamphlet, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
So I see you get like almost to the end, really, before anyone brings up the C word, even the A word, those words being anarchism and communism.
I was thinking of different CNA words.
Yeah, I'm like, what's the CNA word? Yeah.
The part where you just start, just do cunt in all caps for the entire paragraph, that was really riveting stuff
the
right
capitalist cunt class must be overthrown.
Those assholes. That's the A word.
But no, so I think we've had a lot of conversations on the left lately about what kind of words we should be using. I often get scolded for calling myself a libertarian socialist because libertarian means something else now, and it's confusing to people. You can't reappropriate that word once it means what it means in America, blah, blah, blah.
It's a great provocation.
Yeah. And there are people who find it genuinely alienating, right? There are people who have really bad associations with communism, even if you tell them, we're not the bad kind, we're the anti-state kind.
These are real historic things.
Like my friend, I have a friend who's in DSA with me, who her family's from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And they were fighting the Viet Cong in the war, and her grandpa had a horrible experience where they lined up a bunch of people and shot every other one and told the survivors to tell everyone to stop fighting the Viet Cong. So they came to America, and growing up, it was always like the communists were the boogeymen, It was like, finish your vegetables or the communists are going to come get you. Yeah. And if DSA had been called Democratic Communists of America, she might not have joined.
Right.
But she always considered herself a progressive, and, she got into Bernie Sanders, joined DSA. Through that, learned that Bernie Sanders isn't even a socialist. He's a social democrat. And now she's pretty far left with the rest of us on the far left of DSA, who are having debates about what role electoralism should even be playing. But I don't know that she would have joined if we had communist in the name. What's how did you decide whether to use those words or how to use them?
Yeah, well, this was actually written, that section was written by someone else, not by me. And I would have disagreed with using these words. And then the pushback was, well, you have to be honest about your politics. And I'm like, you can fucking be honest about your politics by explaining what you fucking believe instead of putting a label to it. Because I think it's very true, communism has been marred through history because of the shit that people have seen happen and heard, And I mean, when you throw that word out, people are automatically kind of like, what the fuck? When you say anarchism, you know what I hear all the time from people? Well, you just want chaos? Because people think anarchism means chaos, So I think we need to be aware, especially in this moment right now. Perhaps 8 years ago it was different, where there wasn't a lot of people. You didn't have a group like DSA, for example, which is
deep state anarchists, I think they are, right?
Yeah. But
that we only tell you that name once you join, okay?
Yeah, so I'm not, I think you should be very upfront about your politics by saying, hey, you know what I believe? I believe these fucking things. I think, it's fucking wrong for us to be, exploited every day going to these fucking jobs. I think it's wrong for us to be, exploited by our landlords and all these people. But I think it's really important, I think, today to explain your politics, but don't be so attached to these fucking words, these labels.
Yeah, and we are doing something different, right? What we're doing now is somewhat new, right? What my friends and I in DSA are currently thinking about isn't just communism in the classical sense, It's how do we incorporate intersectionality? How do we incorporate not just Marx, not just the old thinkers, but women and people of color into our political ed curriculum? How do we account for that in organizing? How do we come to some sort of happy medium between total anarchy and this authoritarian state? And we don't totally have a word for that yet.
Yeah, this is true.
It's also important to remember that the people who are going to build communism are not the people who call themselves communists today.
Deadass.
Yeah.
And that's historically correct. If you look at even, the upsurges of communist or socialist revolution throughout the country, they were being, it was produced by the working class people who maybe had this sort of vague sense that something was fucked up and couldn't put a name to it, but they still acted within the class struggle, because that's at the end of the day too what separates leftist theory from conspiracy theory is that we understand that day in and day out there is a class struggle. It might be popping off or it might be quiet, right? But every day you go into the fucking on the shop floor or into the fucking service sector job, whatever it is you do, right? There is a struggle there between you and your boss. There's a struggle between labor and capital that exists, whether it's evident or not.
I really hope that what I've seen continuously happen with leftist groups doesn't happen with DSA. Because people need fucking somewhere to go who are thinking about these things, who are looking around, who are saying, hey, you know, like something's up here and I want to learn more. I want to talk about this. I want to understand, you know?
And you guys have both kind of touched on this, but you've talked about this historical moment that we're in. And it is true now that the S word, right, not shit, but socialism is now way more acceptable than it has been in the past, certainly in my lifetime. So we have a lot of room to move around at this moment in time. And to get these people who are maybe into flat earth or Bilderberg or whatever, or God forbid, anti-Semitism, and bring them to our side, because we actually have a movement now that is growing, that is in the streets, that is doing things.
Yeah, we don't want to be a counterculture, right? And we're very aware of that. Like, we want to make these ideas as mainstream as possible, because not everyone's going to join DSA. And like, we don't think that, well, most of us don't think that we're like some revolutionary vanguard that's going to like do it for everyone else. So like, I think Andy had a funny moment actually when he met some of my DSA friends in the park, and he had just been talking to one of his anarchist friends about something.
Before I tell that story, I'll say that the anarchists in the last couple of years have made one strategic improvement, which is a lot of them are shifting from the black bloc to the gray bloc. But the gray bloc is when you dress to not draw attention to yourself. Well, you dress like a college student or.
But then how will anyone know that they're anarchists?
Well, exactly. The idea is not to say that we're this like rival army or this like cohesive political faction, especially when you're very small and not like very streetwise, but to present that like we are regular people, and also there's some security in not dressing like a criminal. But so yeah, at May Day, I was hanging out with some anarchist people, and they were like, you know, off to the side complaining about everything, and I was as well. That's what I specialize in. That's probably why I'm an anarchist.
That's why you're here.
And then two DSA.
I thought you were a liberal.
And I'm an anarcho-liberal, I guess. Two DSA people came up and were like just really friendly, telling us about the Medicare for All event they were doing, and you know, it'd be cool if you came out. Here are the speakers. This is why we think it's important. Hope to see you there. And they didn't just like put a newspaper in our face, or they didn't like. They were just trying to talk to people like regular people would, and it was really refreshing. And of course, when they walked away, my anarchist friends complained about them.
Well, shout out to Ben and Andrea. You guys are very nice.
You know, they're over here like fucking flyering for Medicare for all, and they're acting like normal people. Why? Because they're talking about something that directly impacts their fucking life, not some theoretical shit that no one understands, right? That I'm pretty sure half the left doesn't fucking understand all this theoretical shit, but they pretend to. And so, you know, when I first came to the left and I had all these ideas, oh, you know, let's do a fucking food program on the block once a week or something, or once a month something. And I was told, no, because that's like economistic, or that's just like, you're not actually doing anything. You're just being like a social services agency, or you're just like, whatever, a billion different critiques, right? And maybe that's not the best thing to do, although I still think it's important to feed people, because hunger is a real fucking issue.
Black Panthers did a lot of good work with that.
You know, but, you know, I think it's important to keep in mind that, like, ultimately, what is being a leftist? Yeah, you can have all your theory and all your everything that you read and be a super smart guy, but you have to be grounded in the reality of people's fucking lives, because that is actual struggle. Leftists always want to talk about struggle. That is fucking struggle. People are struggling every fucking day. Be connected to that shit. Like, let's talk about that, because we are fucking connected. This is collective. So sorry, that's my rant.
No, that's great.
So just to wrap things up then, everyone needs to be more like DSA.
Everyone start dressing normal, wear khakis and polo shirts.
And communism, or as we'll call it, like, you know, just the good shit, is the spaceship to get us off of this prison planet.
Oh God, I can hear all the criticisms now, all the things that the left is gonna say.
Fuck 'em. Well, that's what you're here for. We don't give a flying fuck about any of them.
I like you guys.
We're gonna get expelled from Spartacus League.
I'm burning my card right now in anticipation.